Good morning, folks. Well, it's a few minutes after 9, so we're going to go ahead and kick off the program. I'm Jeff Stratton. I'm the chairman of the Triad here in Waldo County, and also serving as the county sheriff. But I just wanted to speak real quick about Triad before I introduce or before Court introduces our guest speakers. The last time we had a program like this in Triad was back in 2018. I can't believe it's been that long. We did it up at the Performing Arts Center in Unity. And we've had a lot of requests to do more of these because there are so many scam. We all get calls every day. We get stuff in the mail. It's really disheartening to see how much of this is going on. So, but just real quick before we do that, I just want to tell those of you who don't know about Triad, there's a lot of people. Triad has been in Waldo County now for 21 years. And we have Pat Pearson in the back. Pat, can you raise your hand? Pat Pearson was instrumental in getting Triad started 21 years ago and was one of our charter members. So I want to thank Pat for all she's done over the years. But Triad, really what we are here for is to help senior citizens feel safe and secure in their homes. Really, basically, that's what it's about. And we have a lot of different programs. We have a Triad table up in the back that has pamphlets that explain all of our programs. Also, the program for today has some information about Triad on it. And so if you have any questions at all about Triad, there's many of us here today that are volunteers. And and we really want to thank you for coming. But again, we are here because we want our senior citizens to feel safe and secure in their homes and stay in their homes longer. That's really what it comes down to. So at this time, I'd like to introduce Court Dwyer. Court is one of our newer members of Triad. We're very happy to have him on board with us. And he is going to go through the housekeeping and introduce our guest speakers. Thank you, Court.
Thank you. I think, can you all hear me if I speak like this?
Yeah.
I never met a microphone I didn't like, but a bit of an overkill for you all at this point. Hi, my name is Court Dwyer, and I am a member of the Waldo County Triad. You know, there is a fine line between fishing and just standing on the shore looking silly. What causes us to cross that line when we're on the phone with somebody who's really nice and talking to us, and we say something like, sure, I'd love to give you my social security number. Okay? Yeah, why don't I give you my credit card as well so you can use that? What causes us to do that? Well, today, we are going to try and do some education with you, going through some outcomes today that will educate you and talk about some scams that are actually occurring out there right now, okay? How to handle them, how to give you some real ideas to go back home and deal with them. Our topic today is so expansive, we might not even cover everything. I have done this MC work before, and what I'm going to try and do is help things along, keep timing going. All 4 of our presenters have complained about the short time of 30 minutes to get everything in. It's tough, but I'm sure they will. Some housekeeping things. If you have not been in this building, the restrooms are in the back, right to you, left to me, right outside these double doors here. You probably spoke with some of our volunteers when you came in, and we are going to ask you to hold your questions during each presentation. I will introduce each presenter as they come up to do their presentations so that you know who they are and their background. But we ask that you hold your questions. You have been given a pamphlet and a pen, and inside there is a card. I'm going to ask you to write your questions down as we go through the morning. There's a bowl up here, or one of our volunteers can collect them. And what they will do is wean out duplicates and kind of consolidate them, so we can get as many questions done as we can. I will keep to the noon end of our formal time together, but if the people that want to stay and talk about scams and some other things, or perhaps their question wasn't answered, the informal part would start at noon. But we're going to do Q&A from 11:30 to noon. When the presenters have all finished with their points, and we don't get off topic. So with no further ado, let me introduce Diane Porter from the Bangor Savings Bank. Diane is a certified fraud examiner and a certified anti-money laundering specialist. She holds a bachelor's degree in business management with a minor in computer forensics and digital investigation. She is currently a senior vice president of the bank and director of financial crimes, overseeing all aspects of money laundering and fraud operations, including prevention, detection, investigation, and remediation. With 25 years of banking experience in branch management, corporate accounting, and risk management, and her certifications and experience, she is well positioned, I think, to speak to you today on the subject. So without further ado, please welcome Diane Porter.
Good morning. I am so happy to be here. This is a subject that is near and dear to my heart. So let me get started. There's always that one slide that I need to put up. Let me see if I can do that. The greetings and welcome presentation, educational informational purposes. Also, it's important to share that I'm going to share some stories today. I'm going to try to keep them at a minimum since I only have a half hour. Names, details will be changed. They may sound familiar to you. You might know the person, but I will not be giving any type of name or identifying information. So objectives today, we're going to talk about exploitation versus financial fraud. We're going to understand the financial fraud that we're seeing and the most common scams that we're seeing right here in Maine, how you can protect yourself, and then also resources that are available to you. So first, understanding the difference. Oh. How's this? How's this? Ooh. Now we can hear me. All right. So elder exploitation is when your money or assets is used contrary to your best interest. That is most often conducted by someone close to you that you know. I do see this, unfortunately. It's not as prevalent as financial fraud. The most common theme with this is I will hear adult children say, it's my inheritance. I'm going to get it eventually. And I will quickly correct them and say, it's not yours. Don't touch it. Financial fraud is deception to cheat a person out of their money or their property. And that's really what I'm going to be focusing on today, because that's what I'm seeing the most of. And that's most often perpetrated by someone that you don't know. So why are you targeted? Also, I just learned the AARP changed the age of elders, which is now 50. They call you an elder at 50. I know a few of us. So why are you targeted? You have the highest net worth bracket. At 65 to 74, 55 to 64 is a close second. You have the money. That's why you're targeted. Also, you may have a dependency on family or caregivers. You could be overwhelmed. You have a willingness to listen to strangers. That phone rings. I watch my mom run to it. She has no idea who's on the other end, but she can't wait to say hello. We're working on that. You're also very trusting. You may be lonely. The phone rings. You're excited to talk to somebody. You haven't had a visit from your adult children in a couple days. You want to talk to someone. And then I put an alarming statistic on here. It's estimated that only 1 in 44 elders will report that they've been victimized. So you're a good target because you're not going to tell anybody. So we're going to work on changing that. So most common scams that we're seeing. The first one is a lottery scam. You get the phone call. Congratulations, you won. You have won big, big, big. You didn't even know you entered, but you've won. You have to pay some fees. You're going to have to pay a couple thousand in fees. You're going to have to prepay the taxes. You're going to have to pay for an attorney. And in the end, you didn't win. There's no money coming, but they're going to keep asking you for more fees and tell you you're going to be set, your children will be set, your children's children are going to be set from this big lottery you just won. Except you're going to end up with less money for your children because there is no lottery. There is no winnings. The other one is a grandparent scam. You may get a call from someone who says, "Grandma, help me, I'm in trouble. I need you to send money right away." This happened to my mom. Funny story. A gentleman, sounded like a teenage boy, called my mom and said, "Grandma, I'm in trouble. I went to Mexico with some friends. I'm in jail. I need money quick. I need you to go buy some gift cards and send them to my lawyer." My mom told him, knowing that my son does not call her grandma, "I'm going to leave you in jail because if I get you out, your mother's going to kill you." She knew the trick because I'm working with her on these things as well. So they didn't get it that time, but they're going to call you. They may pretend to be a grandchild. They're going to tell you, "Don't call my parents. Don't call my cell phone. Just send the money." And they're going to play on those emotions because you're going to think that your grandchild is in trouble. Government agency scams, pretending to be a government agent. IRS, "You didn't pay your taxes. We're coming for you. We're going to come arrest you. You must send money immediately." Or it could be someone posing from Social Security. "We need to verify some information or you're not going to get your next payment. Provide your Social Security number, provide your date of birth, provide all that information that they can then go and steal your identity." Tech support scams, we're seeing that with computer pop-ups, or someone will call you and say they're from Microsoft or they are from Zoom and there's a problem with your computer. And you need to click this pop-up and they need to access your online banking. They need to access all of your account information you have on your computer to help you with that computer problem. Don't let anyone remote onto your computer. Hang up. Microsoft is not going to call you if you have something wrong with your computer. And that's all. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know what happens in the lights. Romance scams. This one, I think I see the most. I think it's the most, and it doesn't just impact elders. This is really everybody. You may go on a dating website. You may be on social media. Someone will reach out. They will first become your friend. Then they're going to want to have a romance. They're going to say that they're romantically interested in you. They've been looking for someone like you. After a couple weeks, a couple months, they're going to start asking for money. They have a health problem. They're behind on their mortgage. They just need this little bit of help. They're overseas. There was actually a story printed, I think it was in Newsweek a couple of days ago. A woman in Japan paid $30,000 for her online boyfriend who claimed he was a Russian astronaut to come home because he said he needed $30,000 in Earth landing fees. And she paid it. This stuff happens. Online marketplace scams, if you're selling anything online, not every buyer is a crook, but they're out there. They may try to overpay for an item and then say, "Oh no, I sent you too much money. I'm going to need you to send some back." You'll send the money back. The check that they gave you will not clear. It will bounce. You're out the item if you've mailed it, and you're out the money that you sent back. And the one-time passcode scams, this one is a newer one. This is if someone is trying to add your debit card or credit card to a mobile wallet. Maybe they've gotten your card number from you over the phone. Maybe they've gotten it from a breach somewhere, but somehow they've gotten hold of your credit card number and they're trying to use it by adding it into a phone. It's very easy once it's in a phone to spend money without PIN numbers, signatures. And they need that one-time passcode to make it all work. So they'll call and say, "I'm from the bank. Can you read me that code you just received?" So spoofing, I'm not sure if you've heard of this term. Really, it's trickery. All trick, no treat. I try to play on the fact that we're in October here. Bankers don't really have jokes, so that's my one joke in this slide or in this presentation. So sender's email address may be tampered with. So if you're getting emails, really pay attention to the email address to make sure that it is from the right person. An R and an N in a word together can look like an M. So they are using that. They might use, "My name is Diane," D-I-A-N-E. They may add an extra N, just something that you don't quite notice to trick you. Also within emails, you could have attachments and unfamiliar links. Clicking that can put malware on your computer. Doing that, they then have access to your computer. And again, any records you have on your computer, files, if you access your online banking, if you have online banking, that channel is secure. However, if they're on your computer, they can see what you're seeing, and then they can actually steal your credentials and log in as you. And then also phone spoofing. Years ago, when I did these presentations, I used to tell you to count on your caller ID. Look at your caller ID and see who's calling. I'm here to tell you, don't do that anymore. You can't trust it. It might say that it's Bangor Savings Bank calling. It may be, it may not be. They've learned how to make it appear that it's us calling. So how fraud works. I'm going to break it down 3 really easy steps. The approach, they're going to call you, they're going to text you, they're going to email you. You could get a computer pop-up. When they communicate with you, there's going to be urgency. You have to do this now. You won, but you have to pay the taxes today or we pick another winner. And they're also going to play on your emotions. You're going to have love when you have those romance scams. You love the person. You want him to come back down to earth from space station. So you're going to pay. You're excited. You won the lottery. That's so exciting. So you're going to get wrapped up in the moment. You might pay. Or there's fear. My grandson is in trouble. I have to do something. They're going to play on your emotions to make you act. And then they're going to come in with the how you're going to send the money. It might be a wire transfer. It could be buying prepaid gift cards. It could be cryptocurrency, make-believe currency out in the internet world. Or they may have you mail cash. They may have you wrap that in foil or hide it in a magazine so that the postal service won't see it, to try to disguise that cash in the mail. So what are banks doing to protect you? Well, we use a software to alert us of any activity that just doesn't seem quite right based on your transactional history. So I'm not comparing one person to another. It's what have you done in the past? And now what are you doing differently? And we will get alerted. Training, training, training. I train everyone at the bank. I train every level at the bank about what to be on the lookout for and what they should be doing. This goes from our CEO and president, Bob Montgomery Rice, down to the newest teller. I also have a task force within the bank. There is a member from every one of our regions, along with our business lines, wealth management, commercial loans, commercial deposits, deposit operations. We meet monthly to talk about trends, scams, the latest that we're seeing, and what people can be doing differently to better protect our customers. We're questioning you at times. It may feel like an invasion of your privacy. That is not our intent ever. It is to make sure that what you're doing is for a legitimate purpose and no one is trying to trick you into sending money. We're not, we are not trying to be nosy. We're trying to protect you. We also collaborate with Maine Bankers Association, the American Bankers Association, and local agencies like the Triad. We're here today to educate you and make you aware of what we're seeing. If I can get just one of you to not be victimized, I'm going to feel like today is a complete success because it happens so often and I would love to just make it stop. So protect yourself. Don't answer calls from unknown or blocked phone numbers. If you get a call that's a recording, press 1 to talk to a representative or someone saying, can you hear me? Can you hear me? And you answer a yes, hang up, don't answer. What they're doing is trying to validate your phone number. If you say yes and you're a person, they know that they have a phone number that works. There's a person that will answer the call. That phone number gets added to a list. They're now going to call you with a lottery, a grandson, whatever the case may be. Now they know they have a good phone number and a person that will answer. That's the, can you hear me? Yes, I can. Excuse me. Don't give out personal information. Don't give out your social security number of the phone. Don't give out your credit card number unless you called that person and you're comfortable that you called the right person. So if you're buying something online, certainly enter it. If you're doing a purchase over the phone, you know who you called by all means. But if someone calls you, don't give out mother's maiden name information. If you're on social media, use those security settings. Really lock down who can see what you're posting. Befriend only those that you know. And here's one thing that goes around on social media that will drive me absolutely crazy. First concert challenge. Everybody, let's share and reflect on our first concert we ever went to. When you set up your email account, what was one of those challenge questions? First concert. Another challenge question, what was your first car? Social media, the scammers start them and then people spread them like wildfire and want to play along. What was your first car challenge? Holiday time, there's usually one about your funny elf name. It's social media, we're gonna have fun. It's only our friends that can see it, hopefully. Funny elf name. It is your mother's maiden name is your first name and the street you grew up on is your last name. That's your funny elf name. Well, guess what? You use those pieces of information when you set up your email address, your social media accounts. And what they're doing is they're mining that information so that they can then get into your email, reset passwords, get into your social media, reset your banking credentials, and to impersonate you to commit a fraud. No legitimate company will ever ask you to pay them in gift cards. I'm going to say that again. No legitimate company is going to ask you to pay them in gift cards. You will never have to sit in the Walgreens parking lot with a gift card, peeling the number off the back so you can see the codes and reading it to them. The IRS doesn't do it. Nobody does it. And to protect yourself, talk to your local banker. These individuals are trained to assist. I know at Bangor Savings, they're trained by me to assist. They are trained to recognize when something isn't right, and they're going to ask you questions. And they're doing it because they're your neighbors, they're your community members, and they care. The reason I'm saying this is another trend that we're seeing is that the fraudsters are coaching you. They're going to be on the phone with you when you come in. We see this often. Or they're going to tell you ahead of time. When you go to the bank and they ask you, why are you sending this wire? Tell your banker it's an investment opportunity. Don't tell him about the lottery. You can't tell anyone or you can't get the proceeds. They're going to tell you to be dishonest. Just like when I tell my children, you shouldn't lie, don't lie. So don't lie to your bankers. If someone is telling you to be dishonest, it's a red flag. So now the worst has happened. You're a victim. Now what? Do not pay any more money. So you thought you won the lottery, you sent some money for the fees. You now recognize maybe this isn't legitimate. Be on the lookout for something called recovery fraud. That is, they're going to give their buddy your phone number and they're going to say, hey, I just got them for $25,000 in fees on this lottery. Go ahead and give them a call and tell them you're an investigator. Ask them for $5,000 to help recover the funds. You're already a victim and they're going to try to victimize you again. So be on the lookout for recovery fraud if you have fallen victim. Collect all your information that's regarding the fraud. So all documentation, emails, copies of text messages, anything that you can preserve, put that together. If you have account access, if your account has been accessed, contact your bank immediately so we can get your account locked down. We're going to want to get that secured to make sure that there's no further money or victimization. If you provided your personal information, social security number, date of birth, all of that information, you're going to want to lock down your credit report. You're also going to want to report the fraud to law enforcement. Oftentimes, once the money is gone, it's gone, which is why we work so hard with our training, our frontline folks to stop the fraud before it happens, because once the funds are gone, it's gone. That isn't to say that law enforcement isn't going to do their best to work with us to get your money back, or at least hold those accountable that took your money. And I want you to remember these words. It is not your fault. It is not your fault if you fall victim. You aren't the bad person. It's not your fault. These people are good. Their full-time jobs are to separate you from your money, to trick you to take your money. That is their job. It is not your fault if you fall victim. It is not your fault. And the reason I repeat that so many times is because often we hear people are filled with grief, shame, embarrassment. I can't believe I fell for it. Another quick story. Looks like I have enough time for a story. I'm a storyteller. I met a woman once. I did one of these presentations. She came up to me after and said, I cannot believe people fall for some of this. I would never do this. I just can't believe it, but I appreciate that you came. Well, she happened to be one of our customers. A couple months later, we started seeing some transactions on her account that didn't make sense. We recognized the red flags. We reached out. She thanked us for our time and said not to worry. She knew what she was doing. Before long, she remortgaged her house, sending money to her online boyfriend. She sold her business to send money to her online boyfriend. And then she left our bank because of embarrassment. She said she couldn't face us anymore because she fell victim to something she said she would never do and she knew about. So that is a cautionary tale. It can happen. Check with someone you trust. Check with a banker. If you have a situation and maybe you don't want to talk to your local banker just because of embarrassment, shame, you want to remain anonymous, call another bank, run the scenario by them. we'll help you, customer or not, we will help you. So I have a list of banks in Maine. I got this slide from Maine Bankers Association. So as a Maine banker, we feel it is our collective responsibility to protect you from these frauds and ensure that you are educated and that you know that you have help if it happens to you. And here are some resources for you. So you can call Maine Bankers directly if you have a situation you'd like to talk through. There's legal services for the elderly. There's adult protective services, Office of Aging, local area of aging. I think it's supposed to be on aging. Sorry, I think that's a typo. But we're here and we're here to help. We're here because we care. You are our community members. You are our aunts, our uncles, our grandparents, our parents, and we don't want to see you victimized. And with that, I had a slide for questions, but it sounds like you have to hold them until the end.
We have 2 more presentations, and then we will do the question and answers, please. And if you need help writing those questions and answers down, flag down a volunteer from the Triad and have them help you out. I'd now like to introduce Belfast Chief of Police, Robert Cormier. The chief is a 40-year veteran of law enforcement. Prior to Belfast, he served as the Tilton, New Hampshire Police Chief and Interim Chief of Police for the Hartford, Connecticut Police Department. Bob studied law enforcement at Boston State College and matriculated through a graduate degree program in public service administration at Southern New Hampshire University. He was a graduate of both the FBI National Academy and the FBI LEDA Command Institute. And that institute is the top provider of law enforcement leadership education in the nation. He is a member of several influential FBI associations. Chief Cormier is a 1982 graduate of the Metropolitan Police Academy and graduate of the Los Angeles Police Academy, serving as a member of the LAPD. He also served as the 2015-16 president of the New Hampshire Association Chiefs of Police, first vice president of the New England Chiefs of Police, and was appointed to the New Hampshire Police Standards and Training Council. Please join me in welcoming our police chief for Belfast, Bob Cormier.
Thank you, Gordon. So first of all, I just want to thank my fellow presenters here this morning. I was just saying to Kevin from the FBI, it's great for us to get together, to put these cases together. We have to work together. I can't do it alone. I know Diane would say the same. We can't do it alone. We have to have this partnership in law enforcement to be successful. And we do work together well. And so I got to thank the sheriff for bringing us all here together this morning. And hopefully we can do more things like this because education is key. Over my years as a police officer and a police chief for the last 17 years, you know, we've seen a variety of different types of fraud out there. The sheriff wanted me to talk about kind of what we are seeing and some of the trends, and then also help answer questions on what we can do, and then also my partners at the Maine Bankers Association and state and federal partners that are here. You know, looking back over my career, you know, in the 80s, the type of scams and fraud that we saw were credit card fraud in the 80s, some counterfeit check fraud. And that's when I first started to see the beginning of contractor fraud. Of course, back then, the internet wasn't involved in the fraud cases that we're seeing today. And then in that next decade, the 90s, the evolution of IP addresses and voice over IP technology became common and popular out there. And it was, you know, technology is our friend and it's our enemy at the same time. And so over the last 10 years, that technology that we thought was going to help us in many ways has also created a whole new population of victims out there. And so what we're starting to see is not only seniors. I think a lot of people, when we talk about cybercrime and crime involving technology out there, we typically think of seniors as the most targeted population, but actually what we're seeing out there are victims of all ages. I know a lot of you folks have sons and daughters that are in their 20s, 30s, 40s, maybe even 50s. They're all becoming victims to this. And so we really need to educate everybody of all ages. And each month we see new and different types of scams out there. I was just telling the sheriff, you know, even our police department emails get compromised. Whole city email systems get compromised. They've targeted major cities around the country. And so it's really affecting everybody, and we're all dealing with it, our department included. So if you become a victim of cybercrime, what I would suggest is obviously notify the local police. A lot of people out there, there's starting to become a misperception that we can't do anything, or we can't help, or we're not going to be able to track down the suspects, you know, and that may be the case in with some of these scams, because the internet protocols or the IP addresses that we use to track down these email scams many times lead us to other countries, and that other country may not cooperate with us. We've done some search warrants on IP addresses that have taken us back to Syria, Libya, Nigeria, and those are difficult cases for us to put together. If they become large cases, we work with our federal partners, and they have a lot more resources than we do. Like Kevin mentioned, they have field offices all around the world. And so with the bigger cases, we'll work with them. On the smaller ones, we know that they don't always have the resources to help us with the smaller cases. But with those, it's important for us to get the message out to folks, either through our Facebook page or through the news, what we're seeing out there, to help make not only you folks aware of what's out there, but your sons and daughters too. It seems like once a month lately, I'll find out that someone was a victim of gift card scams, where they send an email or a phone call is made to have folks go out and buy gift cards, and then scratch off those, you know, numbers on the back and give them to the person. And I'm seeing victims in their 20s, 30s, and 40s that are still today in 2022 falling victim to these types of scams. It's not just seniors. And so, and they're still happening. They're alive and well out there. We just got a case yesterday, so they're still there. And the other thing that we're still seeing, and I've seen it throughout my whole career, is contractor fraud. And it's not talked about as much, but it's still alive and well out there too. And so just some things that you can do is check and make sure when you're hiring a contractor to do a roof or a driveway or some work on your house, that you do some due diligence to make sure they're a reputable contractor. If you're not sure, check with your local police department. We can check for you and make sure they're a safe contractor. But we're still seeing folks to this year fallen victim to thousands of dollars in contractor fraud. If you somehow become a victim of financial fraud that involves your bank, we work close with them. If through that process you make a police report and the bank is able to become the victim and make you whole, then we can work close with the banks to try and track down the suspects. If you're still the victim in the case, we just can't go into the bank and get the information we need to investigate the case. The bank's going to ask that you get it, and Diane, you can help me with that. But once the bank becomes the victim, if they've made you whole in that case, then we can follow up the information that we need to try and track down, you know, who took that money from you. So But regardless, when you feel that you've become a victim, people might tell you, you know, the local police can't do anything, and I would caution to listen to that. We absolutely can, and if at a minimum, we want to try and message folks what's out there from month to month as far as scams go. And so the other type of scams that we see involve data breaches. So about, I don't know if you guys remember, probably about 12 years ago, there was some major data breaches with the three major credit bureaus, Equifax, TransUnion. There was also some large data breaches with stores like Target, Home Depot, and a lot of information was stolen and sold out there on the dark web. And that created, again, another generation of population of victims that we're still seeing today. And sadly, those people that fell victim to some of those data breaches, their credit has been affected because, you know, if you get bad credit, it stays with you for years, 7 years. And so we ask that people make a police report, and we'll work with you and your credit bureaus to try and repair some of that damage or mitigate, you know, the damage to your credit. And you know, I'll give you an example. When I was working as a chief in New Hampshire, a woman, she was probably in her 70s. Her information was compromised through a data breach. They went out and got you know, credit cards. They actually got a driver's license, basically completely duplicated her identity. But subsequent to that, they ruined her credit. And so I felt bad for this woman. She came into the station once a year. She would need, you know, police reports and different things. She was constantly dealing with it, and I felt really bad for her. So sometimes when people become a victim of something like a data breach, it affects them for a long time. But it's really important that you work close with your police department so we can get you into the computer system and identify you as a victim, so that if you start to run into issues down the road, we can help you with that. And that's exactly what we did with this woman. And so if you're not sure when you get you know, an email or a phone call, and you want to vet that and make sure it's legitimate, certainly reach out to us. Check with us. We'll help you if we can. In addition to individuals, we also see companies fall victim to this stuff. I had a company that bought some medical equipment for $14,000 from what they thought was a legitimate company online. And they bought it from a company in Florida. Well, the company asked them to send a check for about $14,000 down to Florida. They did. They fell for it. After they said the equipment never arrived, we did a search warrant and tracked down the IP address, identified an address down in Florida to find out the company didn't exist. It wasn't even there. So really, and this was a company that had been in business for a long time. It really affects everybody out there. And so, you know, my partners on the panel were saying, the best thing you can do to avoid being a victim is be diligent, you know, educate yourself. If you can work with your banks to set up alerts, so that if all of a sudden there's a red flag, either in your checking or savings or with your credit cards, if they can set up an alert through your banking system to let you know something doesn't look right. Like, we just got a charge down in Texas. Have you been in Texas in the last 24 hours? Maybe you haven't been. Those type of things. There's also some services out there. There's some phone apps. If you have smartphones, like I have Credit Karma, where I can, you know, check my credit report daily. And if all of a sudden someone opens up a new account with my name, or all of a sudden someone starts to spend up one of my credit cards, I'll get an alert, and it lets me know, hey, Bob, there's something going on here. You just got a new credit card, didn't you? And it's like, well, no, I didn't. I love those type of alerts. I don't want to be a victim either. And as a police chief, I can also become a victim just like you guys can. And so the best prevention is to be diligent, to watch your bank statements, to watch your credit card statements, and set up those alerts any way you can. If you don't have a smartphone, talk to your local bank, like Diane, and see what she can do to help you folks. But I really think that it's important that we keep messaging folks, because you know it's a huge problem out there. It's like the Wild West on the internet, and we don't want to see more people fall victim to it. And so it looks like we're going to save questions to the end. So thank you.
Okay, there's a overview for you. Now we're going to expand out and talk about the whole state. And allow me to introduce the Maine State Attorney General Aaron Triad. The AG was born in Bangor, living there with his family until third grade, at which point he moved to Dixmont. He is a graduate of Nokomis High School in Newport, and he earned a BA from St. Ensel College in New Hampshire and a Juris Doctorate from Roger Williams University School of Law in Rhode Island. Previously, Mr. Fry worked in private legal practice in Bangor, focusing on matters involving criminal defense and family law. He represented parts of Bangor and Orono for 3 terms in the Maine House of Representatives from 2012 to 2018. The Attorney General is Maine's Chief Law Enforcement Officer and represents the state in legal matters ranging from child support enforcement, civil rights and consumer protection, to the prosecution of homicides, felony cases, and major fraud. The Attorney General is also a member of the Baxter Park Authority, overseeing 209,000 wilderness acres of Baxter State Park. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Fry.
Great, Court. Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you all for letting me join with you today to talk about what is a tough topic, but hopefully this is all prophylactic. You're going to walk out of here with a bunch of really good information that you can share, that you can practice. And sort of at the outset, I also want to share Tracton for the organization of this event, the Waldo County Triad. I will report one consumer protection problem. I took one of these delicious cookies. So if anybody really wanted a pumpkin glazed cookie and it's like, oh, who took my cookie? I did. So I'll report myself on that one. But it really is quite a privilege to be able to join you today to talk about some of the stuff that my office is doing. Really, you're going to find there's a lot of concentric circles over the information you're going to get. But, very important here is we keep seeing this, right? Bangor Savings Bank, the FBI, Belfast Police, Waldo Sheriff's Department, my office, we see this happening way too often. And so the extent to which, if nothing else, you hear repetition that's like, oh, really? Putting my information over the internet or putting giving my information to a stranger on the phone, that's a problem. Even if you just walk away with that, it is likely that that will be information that is beneficial to you to avoid becoming the next person that calls one of our offices to report that, unfortunately, you're in a bit of a jam. And I also want to highlight something else. This idea that today part of the focus is on seniors, those who who've been around for a while. But I want to highlight there's no discrimination by scammers as to who they're going to scam, right? The person that they are targeting is a number to them. They might make 100 phone calls. If they get one person to bite, that is going to be their payday, right? They don't care who it is. They don't care your age, your gender. They don't care how old you are, how young you are, if you are rich, if you're poor. Well, they want you to be rich, right? Because they want to get money from you, as much money as they can. So I guess I'll qualify that. Again, they are just, and it doesn't matter how educated you are. To be clear, these are not scams that are geared towards a particular profile. They are whoever bites, the scammer is going to reel you in, right? There was a fishing analogy at the front end. That really is a good way to think about this for a number of different reasons that we'll hit as we go along. As we've, as we have technology is not something, by the way, in the Constitution, that the AG has to know how to use. So I'll just make sure we all know that. So a couple of things, you've already heard that, you know, in terms of targeting seniors in particular, right? But this is true generally for Mainers, trusting, polite, want to engage, want to believe the best in somebody that they're engaging with, unlikely to report because of, the concern, the ego, the shame that might go along with the idea that, maybe didn't take advice that you knew was good advice. But two other things I want to highlight is typically for seniors, the nest egg is a target, right? So the extent to which there are folks that have worked their whole life, have a 401k, have a pension, have a retirement plan, own their home. It really makes for that resource-rich target that scammers want to take advantage of, right? And positive credit. We really can't ignore here that the extent to which you have good credit scores that might be accessible. If somebody gets your social security number, if somebody gets your, personal information, your birth date, that they're able to then somehow use to co-opt your credit, that credit score, which, some Mainers have worked their entire lives, to make very strong, very vibrant, they are going to deplete that just as fast as they can if they can get that information. So those are just two things I want to highlight that go along with what you've heard earlier about, why it is scammers might target certain groups of people. And let me also add that, and this is important from the front end, this goes to the unlikely to report. My hope is that leaving here, nobody's going to have any concern whatsoever reaching out to a trusted person to report if you believe that you've been victimized. The sooner the better, by the way, right? Because, wine, as it ages, it gets better. A complaint that you were the victim of a crime is not wine. It does not get better with age. It gets worse. It makes it harder for law enforcement. It makes it harder for Bangor Savings Bank. It makes it harder to stop a transaction, interdict a transaction. The sooner you can make that report, the better. Don't worry about whether or not you're calling the right person, right? Maybe you were supposed to call the Bangor Savings Bank, but you called the AG's office. We all talk with each other, right? We have all been down this road before, and we are going to be able to help you get to who it is you need to get to. Just don't hesitate to make that call. Let the person you're calling worry about how to get you directed to the right place. I also see Representative Jan Dodge here. She represents Belfast. I know she's contacted my office before with different constituent complaints. I know that there are representatives that get questions from constituents about, oh, hey, I had this happen to me. That information comes in from folks just like Rep Dodge who are working hard to make sure that their constituents are covered, right? So don't think twice about which trusted person you tell, because we're all going to work together to make sure it gets directed in the right place. We're going to talk maybe briefly. I will say this is one thing. I should have thanked Court earlier because keeping me on time is going to be something. So thankfully the chief left me with a little bit of time, I think, if I go a little bit long. We're going to focus on really two different things. Again, this is going to be repetitive in many ways, but I hope different ways of looking at it might provide that reinforcement that we really are serious when we provide this advice. Stranger scams, right? So let's think about these as somebody that you don't know. Well, that's a stranger, right? Is doing what they can to try to convince you to give them something that you have that the scammer wants, right? These common characteristics, you've heard them today already, but it bears repeating, right? They're unsolicited. You're sitting at home, you get the phone call. You're sitting at home, you get the text. You're sitting at home, well, I guess you could be sitting anywhere to get the text, but you're sitting someplace, you get the text. You're sitting someplace, you get the email. It's unsolicited. You didn't play the lottery, a foreign lottery overseas. You didn't think about whether or not your grandson was in jail today, right? It's just something that comes into you. It's attractive, right? So whoever it is on the other side of that text, of that phone call, of that email, they are saying, hey, we have a proposition for you that is attractive. Maybe it's you're going to get money. Maybe it's you're going to help save somebody's life. Maybe it's going to be you're going to bail your grandson out of jail. It's some attractive promise that they want you to engage in. It requires something of you, right? It is required that you give them something in order to get that attractive promise. Your birth date, your bank information, right? Your social security number, personal information about yourself that can be used in some way to build with some of the profile they might already have in order to co-opt your identity and take advantage of that, or take from your bank account, or that Trojan horse. They get in, they get the information, and then they're going to get out with some of your resource, if not all of your resource, right? Time pressure, right? These phone calls, they say, look, your time is running out. In fact, your time already ran out, but I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt. If you do it right now, we're going to get this done. Don't worry about it. Don't hang up. You got to do this. That time pressure works, right? I mean, the reason that we're up here talking to you today is because all of our offices, our agencies, our businesses, we have seen how time pressure really does make people be like, oh my gosh, like my grandson's in jail, or this foreign lottery that I had no idea that I played. I got to say yes now so I can get that foreign lottery money. The time pressure is a tool that has been used by scammers forever. And it continues to be a common characteristics of these emails, texts, phone calls. And it usually requires some non-traditional payment. Sheriff, are you accepting Applebee gift cards as bail payment at the jail for bail?
Yeah.
Not yet. All right. Well, so good. So that my example then will be accurate, right? So if you get a call that your son, your grandson, somebody's in jail, all you got to do is go get an Applebee's gift card and pay that bail, and everything's going to be all set. That is just not. That makes no sense, right? And I know we know it makes no sense, but to the extent that there's an attractive promise, you're concerned about, who it is that they're talking about. There is just enough information to make it sound like it might be true. There's this time pressure that's involved. You might, Applebee's gift card. I mean, maybe if it's a Longhorn's gift card, but so non-traditional forms of payment, keep that in mind. In fact, I think the only way you can pay bail right now is you go to the jail. There's a bail bondsman. They come in and you pay the bail, right? Sheriff? Well, I've been out of private practice for a little while. That's how I was working in Penobscot County. Is you really it was not an easy process, and it never went fast enough for the person who was waiting for that bail to be posted. So, but anyway, gift cards do not pay for bail. So walk out with that. These are the common themes, by the way, and we've heard some of these today. You have the threats, right? There's going to be a legal action. There's somebody from the sheriff's department, somebody from law enforcement coming to arrest you right now. All you got to do is pay me over the phone and we will call them back, right? Tax issues, car warranties. We've had people call into the office to report that, my extended car warranty phone call, I don't even own a car, right? So, these different false threats that, again, get people sort of thinking like, did I pay my taxes? Is law enforcement coming to get me? I don't want to go to jail because, it's complicated how to pay the bail. So just something to think about. These are the kinds of things that try to get you hooked. Also false promises, right? So, there's some investment opportunity, some grants, some sort of free product that, all you got to do is engage with us and you're going to get something really good. These are common themes of these unsolicited calls where you have some time pressure that's gonna go along with it. So, we've heard sort of how these come in, particularly for phone. You might have a live person. It could be by text. So, if you're like me, right, there's a lot of different lists that I might be involved with. You're going to get texts for political things, for business things, and you may get texts from businesses who are saying, hey, look, if you buy this, if you do this, or if there's this concern, right? So text is a way these scams come in. Robocalls, right? Technology, great, but it also makes it really easy to just put thousands upon tens of thousands of phone calls out. Somebody might bite, right? I mean, this going back to the way where we started with the fishing analogy, and something that I think started off that Ms. Porter had recognized is, if you pick up the phone or if you engage with that email that you get where you say, oh, okay, yeah, let me email and engage. If you respond to that text, they're hooking you, right? They now know they have a live one. They're going to keep fishing in that spot until they either A, stop getting any more attention, or B, succeed with their scam. So I just, something to think about is that all these different things, the extent to which there's any engagement, it's going to tell them that there's a live one. So of course, the easiest thing, right, is easiest thing, right, is to not answer. If you get, and I get these all the time. Technology, by the way, is making it a little bit easier now. I'm getting this rent to own scam call. See, it doesn't matter who you are, you're going to get these phone calls, right? So even though my office is responsible for collecting up reports of scam phone calls, I still get them, right? But I don't pick up to tell them who I am because I don't want them to know that I'm a live one. And so, not answering is the way to go. If you do answer, by the way, like if you're just like, oh, it looks like the spoofing, right? It was mentioned earlier, spoofing, where technology has made it now where, scammers can make numbers look kind of close to, what might be a Maine number for us, right? So I mentioned the rent to own scam. This is a number that sometimes comes in from Lewiston, sometimes comes in from Bath, sometimes comes in from Ellsworth. I think the last two calls from this rent to owner from Ellsworth. Again, this spoofing makes it look like it could be a legitimate number, just close enough to maybe, like a local number. So if you do accidentally pick up and like, oh my gosh, I shouldn't have picked this up, just hang up. Don't worry. You're not going to hurt the scammer's feelings. They've gotten beyond that, right? Because they've been hung up before. They don't want to do nice things to you. I understand the whole turn the other cheek idea, but don't worry about them. Just don't worry about them. To the extent that you do, that gives you some concern and you really do have some worry that there might be an issue that you need to address, or if you really think you have some credible information that you want a foreign lottery, I don't think there is going to be, by the way, but let's just bear with me. Always verify. The other good thing about technology is that it makes it very easy or much easier to verify phone numbers that, might be in texts or might be in emails, or if somebody leaves a voicemail, which is really, if you don't answer, if it's anything legitimate, it will probably go to voicemail and you can you can get a number from there. You can look that number up. You can check your credit card statement, or you can check your bank statement to find out if that number matches up with, with the number that they're providing for that prone to be issued. You can, if it says, hey, your grandson in jail, right? You can call your son or daughter to be like, hey, do you have any reason to believe that Aaron's in jail today? Like, what was he doing? So there's just different, or call the Waldo County Jail. In fact, I'm going to talk briefly about grandparent scam, but let me cut in right now with an example of this. So my grandmother, my Mimi, she lives right in Winterport. So she lives in Waldo County. And it's great. I'm glad that she calls me. I'm a little bit concerned that she picks up the phone because I've told her not to pick up the phone for different calls, but she still does, right? And so one day she picked up the phone and they represented themselves to be from the jail, right? And her grandson, Aaron, was in jail. Now, this was 2019. I had just been elected Attorney General for the state of Maine, and my grandmother had some questions about whether or not I would be in jail in Waldo County. Maybe Penobscot County, but not Waldo County, right? And so she hung up, right? But apparently it wasn't enough for her to be like, geez, is Aaron in jail? So she calls the sheriff's department first. She doesn't call me first. She calls the sheriff's department, calls Waldo County. It's like, hey, is Aaron Fry in jail? And they're like, no, Aaron Fry's in jail, not in jail. And so then she calls me and she's like, oh, let me tell you about the scam. I'm like, well, Mimi, why didn't you call me to ask me if I was in jail, first of all? But anyway, that's just a way of getting to, this was an example of where they had who she was. They had a name of a grandchild, right? So she did have a grandchild named Aaron, who would be in Maine, right? So they got that right. They knew that she was out of Waldo County because they had represented themselves to be from the Waldo County Jail. And so there was some information there that made it sound, even though I don't know why she thought that it might have been picked up. I mean, I had some wild times back in the day. Maybe she thought I had reverted. But that's just a long way of saying, I'm glad that she took the advice to hang up. First of all, she picked it up, but again, that's a separate story. But she called to verify independently from a resource that she could trust, and did not fall for that. So she was thinking about that. The other good thing about technology now is, you can register with blocking services. It has gotten better by carriers, AT&T, Verizon, US Cellular. Carriers have recognized that in order to make sure their customers are not irritated, that there is a responsibility on the carrier to be attentive to what kinds of calls are being put through. And there was some federal legislation that did make some requirements on these carriers to be more attentive to these types of spoofing and spam phone calls. And so they may be doing it on their own, there may be a blocking service through your carrier, so AT&T, Verizon. There may be additional blocking opportunities through your carrier. There is still the do not call list. I don't know if folks remember that. I think that came online somewhere around 2000, somewhere in there. That's still active, and it covers landline and cell phone, right? And so there's just these different blocking services. It's just a really good way to make sure you have a belt and suspenders approach. You have folks who are working to try to address this behavior on one end, the extent to which you can do what you can to protect your information on the other end. That's really important. Let me just before I talk a little more about this, let me just add something that I think is worth a different way of looking at it, right? So if I have $100 bill, I'm not going to go to the local grocery store, or I'm not going to walk down the street with this $100 bill in my hand, just walking around, right? Like just here's, I'm going to do something with that to try to protect it from people being able to access it quickly or take it, right? I'm going to put it in my wallet, put it in my back pocket. Maybe I'll put it someplace else. Maybe I'll put it in the bank, right? I mean, that's probably the better place to put it, given that technology allows for different sorts of electronic payment now. And so please keep that in mind when you're thinking about how it is you might be presenting your information or your money, right? When you think about your bank account information, the easier you make it to be put out there, the easier it's going to be for somebody to take advantage of that. Just like walking down the street with a $100 bill, somebody could just come up and yoink, take it, right? Think about that as if you put your social security number out there, put your birth date on there. That that goes for Facebook, right? If you're like, hey, on Facebook friends, this is my bank account number. I know you wouldn't do that, but you'd be surprised what people post on on Facebook right now, right? Post on social media. And so just when you put it out there, when you ring that bell, right? Have we all heard this before? You can't unring a bell, right? When you ring that bell, it makes it so much harder to pull it back in. So this was just an interlude to reiterate that, you take steps to protect your money, you take steps to protect your house. You probably lock your doors at night, for example, right? You take these different steps to make sure that your assets are secure. You have a lot of control by not putting your information out there, control that you lose if you do start to put it out there. I've already given you the story about my grandma, my Mimi, and sort of what she experienced. You heard that. It may take different forms, right? So in this case, it was my grandmother got the call to say that one of her grandchildren was in jail. She had received another phone call, interestingly, where they got my cousin's name, Chad, right? So where they had gotten that. But again, she did exactly what it is that that we're talking about here. And by the way, even though this is under the heading of grandparent scam, this is frankly just good advice all around. So when I mentioned earlier that there really is no profile for the scammer, they're not like, oh, if you're not 63 and male and right, they don't care. They're trying to catch a fish. Hang up. Don't send money. Check with the family member, or check, I guess, with the Waldo County Jail in the case of my grandmother. And report it, right? The extent to which there's a risk that you may have been compromised. If you did put some information out there, just going back to where I think I started with, don't worry about exactly if you have the right person. If you call the police, if you call the AG's office, if you call your bank, it is going to get directed to the right place, or you will be, they'll help you get to the right place. You heard about, you heard some of these earlier. These are the different types of common scams that we hear about through the office, that I hear about from colleagues, other AG's offices around the United States. You've heard about charities, lotteries. I want to just, online dating. I mean, again, I'm going to get to, how am I doing on time, by the way? Am I doing okay? All right, I got thumbs up. So that half an hour more, right? I think is what, no. The online data, I mean, again, where you have that trust sort of built up. I'm going to talk a little bit about that when it comes to trusted people. But grants, right? So this is just one example, and I'm going to talk charities in the same vein. There has been work, particularly over the last 2 years, for the federal government, for the state of Maine, right? So Representative, there was the $850 checks, for example, that the legislature had returned through a relief program at the beginning of the year. And then you had, I think it was at least three different relief checks that may have been arranged by the federal government. created fertile ground for scammers to be calling, right? You didn't have to do anything. Maybe you had to file a tax form that just, confirmed that you existed in Maine, right? But what happened were scammers used the knowledge that there was a grant coming out to call and try to convince people that, oh, we can get you your money faster. All you got to do is give me your social security number, give me your, bank information, and we'll get you that $850 check. We'll get you that, $1,200 check. Not really a grant, but unemployment benefits, same thing happened, right? Where, there'd be work to get information of, Mainers, and then it would be co-opted so that it could be pulled in that way. Whenever you have some sort of money that is going out, that's something that scammers are going to want to try to get a piece of, right? Because they know that $850 check is going out to Mainers all across the state. The $1,200 check is going out to citizens all across the US. So whenever you have stuff like that come up, on the other side, this is another Mimi story, right? So my Mimi gets this call and she's told, hey, through the relief programming that the federal government passed, we're giving grants to seniors, right? It's $9,000. You're going to get $9,000. All you got to do is go to Western Union, put down $200, and you'll get the grant. So we all know that that's not how grants work. That's not how the federal government works, right? But again, it's to the extent that there was relief programming out there, there will be some folks who think, oh, that's believable. I think I'll try that. Western Union, by the way, is not I don't think is the way the United States government has been distributing its grants, but I did forget how bail. I guess I know how bail work now. So we'll see. Don't think it works that way. Also, natural disasters, right? So it is human for us to want to support people who have been, who've been a victim of a natural disaster, right? A flood, a hurricane, a tornado, right? I mean, we see this, devastating event happen to people, and we have an impulse that we want to support in some way, right? Benefit of technology is you can go online through verified sites, Red Cross, what have you, and there are verified charities in which you can direct that human impulse to want to help, somebody who may have been the victim of a hurricane or a natural disaster or a flood. But scammers use this as an opportunity to also try to use that human impulse to just get you to give. So they'll call up and say, hey, we're collecting money for, Hurricane Sandy relief, right? Or Hurricane Ian relief, and they just want you to give your money or information over the phone. The human impulse is, I want to help people who've been victimized. There are ways to do that, though, that are not through an unsolicited phone call from somebody that you had no idea existed until you didn't take my advice and you picked up the phone, or our advice, I guess I should say. Want to talk just briefly, sort of piggybacking on some discussion about the trusted person exploitation. So I've just been talking about scammers who are not known, right? They're strangers. There is no reason for you to know them. It's a cold call. But something else that my office does see is the trusted person scam or exploitation, really is the better way to describe it, right? And so I mentioned earlier with online dating that I'd come back a little bit to that. We do see these relationships that are maybe developed online. Technology, good, connects you with people, goes into that loneliness that was talked about earlier, starting with Ms. Porter, where people they're lonely and they have this connection with somebody, they want to keep that connection. But dating partner could also be in person, right? It's not just online dating; it's also regular dating. The extent to which we've all watched Unsolved Mysteries, right? And we've all watched like Dateline. We know that these sorts of taking advantage of that relationship. Family members, friends, professionals, so like caregivers, home workers, service providers, this is fertile ground for, somebody that that you may have raised, that you may have an intimate relationship with, that you may depend upon for your care. These are trusted people, and unfortunately, we have all up here received reports of where that relationship has been taken advantage of. These are examples that come to mind for my office, right? The relationship being used to get you to sign papers, right? So to get you to sign, sign off on a bank account, making you a co-account. I'm not getting the language right. Joint owner, thank you. See, I'm glad, this is great. This is helping me out. I didn't have my cookie, so I couldn't, that wasn't quite going. A power of attorney, right? So power of attorney, depending on how extensive it might be, that signing off on that document may give the person that you're signing it over to a wide range of authority to execute documents in your name, to go to the bank, to access your accounts. The relationship may be used to make you fearful in some way that, oh, geez, you got to be concerned about this, but trust me, I'm your trusted person. I'm going to help you get through that. I just need some of your authority, some of your asset. And then also just items being taken that, you didn't give the person, but they just sort of walk out with, might start small, but then get bigger. Not mentioned here, but it was highlighted earlier, is, there's also the, geez, I hit a hard time. I can't make my rent this month. I can't make my car payment this month. And, we'll call it death by 1,000 cuts, right? Where just over time, those rent payments and those car payments, they add up. Again, the longer it goes, the harder it's going to be to address that victimization. It's always important. So in private practice, as attorney general, as a lawyer, you're probably like, well, of course, Aaron, this is like self-preserving. You're going to say, talk to a lawyer. There is so many reasons why it is important to talk to a financial professional, to a lawyer, not only when it comes to making sure that you have the control that you want to have legally over your assets and your person, but frankly, there are some very good reasons for purposes of like federal look back, right? Like if you are concerned about long-term care and making sure that you can afford that without depleting some of your other assets, you need to be planning for that at least 5 years in advance, so that if you do need that long-term care, you can take full advantage of what the law allows for you to be protected. So a lawyer, a financial planner, these are individuals who, sure, it might cost you a little bit of money, but it really does save you money, give you that peace of mind that is worth it in the long run, to give you that control. And by the way, if you have, let's do an example of my mom and me, right? So let's say I go to my mom and I say, hey, mom, I need you to sign this power of attorney, right? I mean, here it is. I'm the attorney general, right? I'm an attorney. I'm bringing her something. She should trust me, right? Turns out the power of attorney gives me a lot of power over, my mother's affairs. I hope my mom would say, you know what, Aaron, I'm going to go talk to a lawyer who is going to represent me in this just to make sure or a financial planner, just to make sure I get this right. Well, mom, how about if I come with you? I'll come with you and I can hear this advice too, right? It really, to the extent that you're going to talk with a trusted person, it does not make any sense to bring along somebody who's trying to get something from you, who's going to benefit from that transaction. Because even if you sit with that attorney, you sit with that financial planner, you sit with your bank, right? And you get advice that suggests, hey, this person is really not, Aaron is up to no good. We're going to walk out of there and I'm going to say, mom, that financial planner, they didn't know what they were talking about, right? They're not, I mean, I think there's a bar complaint, for goodness sake, right, on that lawyer. Like, don't worry about what they had to say. Trust me, I'm your son. I would never do anything bad to you. It is so important to, when you're planning, talk with somebody that you can trust, who does not have some benefit in that transaction to give you candid advice. It might be advice you don't want to hear, by the way. That's one thing that I don't often like about my job, is that I have to tell people, yeah, you can't do that. It's unconstitutional. It doesn't make any sense. I can't understand it. But you need that advice, right? Because that will help you do what you want to do. So I just said this, talk with the bank alone, talk with the lawyer alone, talk with, because you really need that unvarnished, unbiased advice. And then there's also, there's a slide on this earlier about your local area agencies on aging. There are different resources that will provide some of the same sort of informational resource to help you make decisions about how to proceed. Remember that time pressure I talked about earlier when it came to the phone calls, right? You get the phone call and they're like, hey, you got to do this now. In fact, it's too late, but we'll give you a couple more seconds to do it. that time pressure is also very successful at getting you to sign off on something that somebody wants you to sign off on, right? So, hey, you might, Mom, you might fall down the steps on the way out to talk with that lawyer. And then what are we going to do? Because you haven't signed this power of attorney. You haven't signed these legal documents, right? You just sign these now and then we'll go figure it out, right? But you got to do it now because who knows what's going to happen in 5 minutes. I have to tell you that no legal document that protects a person is ever raced into with haste, right? I mean, to the extent that you need a legal document that is going to encapsulate what it is that you want to have happen, you need to be involved in that conversation, right? You need to be involved in formulating how it is you want your assets, you want your, decision-making, your long-term care. You need to be involved in that plan. There is nothing in the example that I gave. I do not talk with my mom on a regular basis about, hey, what do you want to do? There is no way I'd be able to present her with something that represents her interests. So time pressure, it's used, it's been successful, but just keep in mind that that is a red flag if you or you hear a friend is being told, you got to sign off on this right away. If you think you've been scammed, right, call your bank. Call the AG's office. There's this number here. We also have a web presence. So you go to, it's easy actually. We were researching earlier. It's just, the AG's office, Maine AG's office. It's gonna pull right up. We have a bunch of consumer protection resources that are available. We have phone numbers. So, I mentioned that if you call us, we know how to get you to where you might need to go. If it's not us, we can do that. Let me add, and this came up earlier. It is likely that when you're being scammed, it is not your neighbor who is calling you, right? So the jurisdiction of my office, the jurisdiction of the Belfast chief here, probably the scam caller is not going to be within our jurisdiction. That is why we have established relationships with the FBI, right? With federal agencies who are equally concerned about this type of behavior. It's why, there's reporting systems that allow us to report up to like the Federal Trade Commission, for example. All AG's offices across the United States, law enforcement agencies across the United States have the ability to feed in so that if the call is coming in from someplace in the United States, or if that call or those calls are coming in from international locations, we're making sure that the entity that has the jurisdiction to get it will at least have access to information so that they know, where they should be looking. And by the way, even if it turns out that it's not something that we have jurisdiction over and can take immediate action to get it back, the more phone calls we get about a particular scam or the more information we get about something that's cooking right now, that gives us the opportunity to try to work with our state, federal law enforcement partners, as well as, work with different state agencies and maybe even do a press release to advise folks that, hey, these calls are going out there right now, this scam's going on right now, be aware. You get to see ic3.gov, very helpful website. Federal Trade Commission has a lot of great information, as well as the ability to file a complaint. And identitytheft.gov has some great help as well. And then I've already mentioned local areas on aging. What is the local area on aging here in Waldo County? Spectrum Generations. All right, Spectrum Generations. So, make sure you know who they are. They can provide some great resources. Legal services, Maine Legal Services for the Elderly, great resources, including online resources, but a hotline as well. Law Enforcement, Maine Adult Protective Services. You've heard about these folks already today. Let me just add one other thing to highlight, because it is something that really did impact this area. The chief brought this up, and it's just something to flag. I don't really have time to delve too far into it. But the contractors, right? It was mentioned earlier about how this is a hot market right now, right? If people want to get their roof, if they want to get their driveway paved, if they want to get any sort of home repairs done, it is a boom market. Because people sat in their homes for 2 years, decided they hated their homes, and now they're all rushing out to try to figure out how to improve. And so it's a boom market, and people are willing to compromise on how exacting they are at doing the due diligence to figure out if this person is a good contractor. Unfortunately, and this was before the pandemic, we did see Castle Builders. Hopefully you've all sort of seen that in the news, but this was an individual who engaged in behavior that, you know, he'd go and he'd make promises about what it was that he was going to do to the home, whether it be a roof or some sort of improvement on the property, asked for money up front. Sometimes, rarely, sometimes would even start, you know, take the shingles off and then would disappear, right? Disappear with the money, doesn't finish the job if he even started the job. This has actually been in court, by the way, so I'm not sharing any information that hasn't already been available on this particular case. But there were I think the number is around 74 comes to mind of those who we identified may have been victims of this particular contracting practice, right? There are laws on the books that are intended to protect Mainers from this sort of behavior, right? There's the Home Construction Contract Act that requires contractors engage in certain behavior when there's a home repair over $3,000, right? Needs to be reduced to writing. You know, so there are resources available, laws to protect. My office, by the way, if you go onto our consumer protection page, you know, we have a consumer protection law guide that hits different areas. We have a whole chapter on Maine construction contracts. It is so important, particularly with one of the most significant assets that you have, right? Your home. It is so important that you do your due diligence, make sure you know protections exist, and then hold a contractor accountable to those protections, so that you don't, so that the phone call you're making to my office is not the call that folks from Castle Builders, for example, had to make. Thank you for, I know I went over time, so thank you for your patience. Thank you to the chief for making sure I had a little more time, I guess. And I just want to say it really is a treat. You know, my thanks to Triad here, to the sheriff, and to all of you to be a part of this. Thank you.